Hello everyone, I'm here this week to tell you about my favourite book as part of our celebration of Literacy Week. I'm sitting here in front of my special bookshelf which has all my favourite books and also the prettiest books that I have that I like to be able to see. Just behind me here is a trilogy of books which my favourite book is a part of. It is called His Dark Materials and they were written by Philip Pullman. And I actually remember quite vividly reading the first book for the first time when I was 12 years old because I borrowed it from the school library and I was hooked kind of straight away, and this idea of this kind of magical world and strange creatures and things going on. I read it very quickly and rushed back and managed to get the second book and again read that, loved it, and then was very sad to discover that the third book was not finished and had not been released yet. So I actually had to wait several years to read the final part and find out what happened. However, very luckily though, in the last couple of years, Philip Pullman has decided to actually write more of the story of the main character Lyra and has created books that come before and after the original trilogy, so I'm really enjoying getting to find out a little bit more about my favourite character. My favourite book is this one here, which is actually the second of the original trilogy. It is called The Subtle Knife by Philip Pullman and continues what has happened in the first book, which is called Northern Lights. In the first book, the main character Lyra kind of discovers a lot of things about who she really is and has to go on a very exciting journey to kind of save people and does all these things even though she is basically a little girl. The second book continues that journey, but she meets another character called Will, who is from our world. Lyra lives in a world very similar to our world, but it has some slight differences. This book is my favourite of the trilogy because in this book Will finds the subtle knife, and this knife actually allows him to cut open doorways to travel between different alternate worlds, and they are able to travel to places similar to our world, some very different from our world, and I just really liked the idea that of that kind of fantasy idea of different worlds out there and different things going on. And I've always really liked that kind of magical fantasy type thing. So I'm going to read you a small part from this book where Will first discovers that there is actually other worlds. He came to a large roundabout where the road going north crossed the Oxford Ring Road going east and west. At this time of night there was very little traffic, and the road where he stood was quiet, with comfortable houses set back behind a wide expanse of grass on either side. Planted along the grass at the road's edge were two lines of hornbeam trees, odd-looking things with perfectly symmetrical, close-leaved crowns, more like children's drawings than real trees. And the street lights made the scene look artificial, like a stage set. Will was stupefied with exhaustion, and he might have gone on to the north, or he might have laid his head on the grass under one of those trees and slept. But as he stood trying to clear his head, he saw a cat. She was a tabby, like Moxie. She padded out of a garden on the Oxford side of the road where Will was standing. Will put down his shopping bag and held out his hand, and the cat came up to rub her head against his knuckles, just as Moxie did. Of course, every cat behaved like that, but all the same, Will felt a longing for home, and tears scalded his eyes. Eventually, this cat turned away. This was night, and there was a territory to patrol. There were mice to hunt. She padded across the road and towards the bushes just beyond the hornbeam trees, and there she stopped. Will, still watching, saw the cat behave curiously. She reached out a paw to pat something in the air in front of her, something quite invisible to Will. Then she leapt backwards, back arched and fur on end, tail held out stiffly. Will knew cat behaviour. He watched more alertly as this cat approached the spot again. just an empty patch of grass between the hornbeams and the bushes of garden hedge, and patted the air once more. Again she leapt back, but less far and with less alarm this time. After another few seconds of sniffing, touching, whisker twitching, curiosity overcame weariness. The cat stepped forward and vanished. Will blinked. Then he stood still close to the trunk of the nearest tree as a truck came round the circle and swept its lights over him. When it had gone past, he crossed the road, keeping his eyes on the spot where the cat had been investigating. It wasn't easy, because there was nothing to fix on. But when he came to the place and cast about to look closely, he saw it. At least, he saw it from some angles. It looked as if someone had cut a patch out of the air, about 2 metres from the edge of the road, a patch roughly square in shape and less than 1 metre across. If you were level with the patch so that it was edge on, it was nearly invisible, and it was completely invisible from behind. You could only see it from the side nearest the road, and you couldn't see it easily even from there, because all you could see through it was exactly the same kind of thing that lay in front of it on this side, a patch of grass lit by a street light. But Will knew, without the slightest doubt, that the patch of grass on the other side was in a different world. He couldn't possibly have said why. He knew it at once, as strongly as he knew that fire burned and kindness was good. He was looking at something profoundly alien. And for that reason alone, it enticed him to stoop and look further. What he saw made his head swim and his heart thump harder. But he didn't hesitate. He pushed his shopping bag through and then scrambled through himself, through the hole in the fabric of this world and into another.